The morning sun was just starting to cut through the heavy coastal fog, painting the brick walls of St. Jude Academy in cold, quiet shades of gray. To anyone passing through the wrought iron gates of the prestigious boarding school, it looked like the picture of absolute perfection. Uniformed students walked down pristine stone pathways, carrying leather satchels and talking softly about early admissions and rowing practice. But behind those grand archways and sparkling glass windows, a quiet, suffocating fear had taken root. In room 304, 17-year-old Chloe Miller sat near the back of the classroom, staring blankly at her notebook. Her uniform was always impeccably pressed, her posture perfect, and her father's navy blue coat folded neatly over the back of her chair. Most of her classmates assumed Chloe had it all. She was bright, focused, and her family came from deep money, the kind of quiet wealth that didn't need to shout. But what none of them knew was that Chloe hadn't spoken a single word in nearly 3 weeks, and the reason why was about to shatter the silence of that elite school forever. Chloe wasn't always quiet. Just a few months earlier, she had been one of the most vibrant voices in the hall, always ready with an encouraging smile or a thoughtful answer. Her father, Commander Marcus Miller, was a highly decorated Navy SEAL who spent months at a time deployed in remote corners of the world. Because of his service, Marcus had spent years saving every spare dollar from his officer's salary and investments so his daughter could receive the best education possible. When her mother passed away 5 years ago, Chloe and Marcus became each other's entire world. Marcus taught her strength, discipline, and above all, integrity. He often told her that true power wasn't found in a uniform or a bank account, but in how a person treated those who had nothing to give in return. St. Jude Academy was supposed to be a sanctuary for Chloe while Marcus was away on a long-term overseas operation. Instead, it had slowly turned into a gilded cage. The atmosphere at the academy had shifted drastically at the start of the semester when the school appointed a new headmaster, Dr. Arthur Sterling. Dr. Sterling was obsessed with reputation, legacy, and donor money. Under his leadership, a small group of wealthy, influential students led by a boy named Julian Vance began to rule the campus with subtle cruelty. Julian was the son of the school board chairman, and he knew he was untouchable. While most students looked the other way when Julian bullied scholarship kids or humiliated staff members, Chloe refused to play along. The trouble began on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Chloe noticed that one of the school's oldest groundskeeper staff, a gentle 60-year-old man named Thomas, was suddenly missing from his post. Thomas had worked at St. Jude for over 30 years, keeping the grounds beautiful and always offering a warm word to students missing home. When Chloe asked Dr. Sterling where Thomas had gone, the headmaster gave a smooth, dismissive answer, claiming Thomas had retired early due to health reasons. But Chloe knew Thomas's wife had passed away the year before, and the school was his only home. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Something was deeply wrong, and her instincts, sharpened by years of listening to her father's detailed stories about observation and truth, told her that Thomas hadn't left on his own terms. Determined to find the truth, Chloe spent her evenings investigating quietly. She noticed subtle inconsistencies in the school's financial ledgers posted on the public bulletin board for the building fund. She watched how Julian Vance and his group seemed to operate with total immunity, even when caught violating curfew or destroying property. But when Chloe tried to bring her concerns to her favorite teacher, Mrs. Gable, the older woman looked around nervously, her hands trembling as she adjusted her glasses. Mrs. Gable softly warned Chloe to drop the matter, whispering that some people in the school had powers that went far beyond the headmaster's office. That night, Chloe received an anonymous, hand-typed note slipped under her dorm room door. It contained a simple, chilling warning. Keep quiet, or your father's sacrifice for your tuition will be stripped away and his reputation ruined. Instead of backing down, Chloe made a choice that left the entire student body in disbelief. The very next morning, she stopped speaking entirely. She walked through the grand hallways like a shadow, refusing to answer roll call, refusing to participate in class, and refusing to speak to the administrators who tried to question her. At first, Julian and his friends mocked her, calling her broken and fragile. But Chloe's silence wasn't a surrender. It was a wall. She began carrying around a heavy, vintage leather camera everywhere she went, taking photographs of every corner of the school, every late-night visitor to the administration building, and every strange transaction taking place near the back gates. Her complete refusal to break, despite heavy disciplinary threats from Dr. Sterling, began to make the leadership deeply uncomfortable. The tension reached a boiling point on a Friday afternoon during a mandatory school assembly. Dr. Sterling stood on the grand stage, delivering a polished speech about honor, prestige, and the upcoming multi-million-dollar athletic center expansion funded by the Vance family. Suddenly, Chloe stood up from her seat in the middle of the audience. Without saying a word, she walked down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing softly against the marble floor. The entire auditorium went dead silent. She reached the base of the stage, pulled a thick leather-bound folder from her satchel, and placed it directly onto the podium in front of the headmaster. Inside were photographs detailing severe safety violations, forged maintenance records, and evidence that funds meant for staff pensions, including Thomas's retirement, were being funneled into private accounts controlled by Julian's family. Dr. Sterling's face turned pale, but he quickly recovered his composure, forcing a tight, artificial smile. He signaled for the security guards to escort Chloe out, announcing to the shocked audience that Miss Miller was clearly suffering from severe stress due to her father's absence. Julian Vance watched from the front row, a smug, arrogant smirk on his face as he met Chloe's gaze. As the guards placed their hands on her shoulders to guide her out, Chloe didn't fight back, nor did she shed a single tear. She simply looked Julian straight in the eyes and tapped 3 times on her watch, a subtle signal her father had taught her to signify that time was officially running out. Word of Chloe's dramatic confrontation spread like wildfire across the campus. While many students admired her courage, the administration immediately moved to suppress the scandal. Dr. Sterling called an emergency meeting with the board of directors that evening, intending to officially expel Chloe and scrub her record before the weekend was over. They locked down the administrative wing, confiscating her leather folder under the guise of an internal review. Chloe was restricted to her dorm room under surveillance, cut off from communicating with anyone outside the gates. They believed they had effectively isolated a teenage girl whose father was thousands of miles away on a dark, classified mission, leaving her completely defenseless against their vast wealth and institutional power. They had severely miscalculated. What Dr. Sterling and the school board didn't realize was that Marcus Miller had strict, unwavering protocols for his home front. Every week, no matter where he was deployed, Marcus had a secure channel through which Chloe sent a simple coded confirmation that she was safe. When 2 consecutive confirmation windows passed without a word from his daughter, Marcus didn't wait for permission or explanations. He immediately requested emergency leave from his commanding officer, presenting evidence that something was seriously wrong at home. Within 12 hours, Marcus was on a long-distance flight back to the States, his mind focused entirely on protecting the only person left in his life who mattered. It was 6 o'clock on a cold, overcast Monday morning when a heavy gray steel SUV pulled up to the main gate of St. Jude Academy. The heavy rain from the night before had left large puddles along the gravel drive. A single man stepped out of the vehicle, wearing a clean, dark suit under a slate gray coat. He moved with a calm, effortless grace that immediately drew the attention of the front gate security team. His eyes were cold, sharp, and intensely focused, scanning every detail of the grounds in seconds. Marcus Miller didn't make a scene at the gate. He simply showed his identification and walked straight past the startled guard, heading directly toward the central administrative hall where the morning board meeting was currently taking place. Inside the boardroom, Dr. Sterling, Chairman Vance, and several prominent school officials were sitting around a long oak table, finalizing the paperwork for Chloe's formal expulsion. They were arguing over how to frame the narrative to the press to ensure the Vance family's reputation remained spotless. Suddenly, the double doors at the end of the hall swung open with a heavy, deliberate sound. Marcus walked into the room, taking off his wet coat and placing it over the back of an empty chair. The room fell into an awkward, stunned silence. Dr. Sterling stood up, clearing his throat and attempting to project authority, demanding to know who allowed an unannounced visitor into a private board meeting. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He stood at the end of the table, looking each man in the eye with a terrifyingly calm expression. He explained quietly that he was Commander Marcus Miller, Chloe's father, and that he was there to collect his daughter, and to pick up the truth they had spent 3 weeks trying to bury. Chairman Vance let out a dismissive laugh, telling Marcus that while they respected his service to the country, he had no understanding of how an institution like St. Jude operated, nor did he have the standing to question the board's authority over a student who had broken rules and raised wild, unfounded accusations against honorable donors. Marcus slowly took a seat at the table, leaning forward slightly, his posture radiate pure, unbroken focus. He pulled out a small, military-grade, encrypted tablet from his inner jacket pocket and placed it on the oak surface. He revealed that Chloe hadn't just taken photos. She had been sending encrypted digital copies of every document she uncovered to a secure cloud server that Marcus kept monitored by an old friend from Naval Intelligence. Chloe was never acting alone or helpless. She was following the exact recon protocol her father had taught her to document corruption safely without placing herself in immediate physical danger. Every missing dollar, every forged signature, and every secret agreement involving Thomas's pension had already been cataloged, cross-referenced, and backed up in 3 separate locations. The color completely drained from Chairman Vance's face as Marcus began reading off dates, account numbers, and specific shell companies linked directly to the Vance family estate. Dr. Sterling tried to speak, his voice trembling, but Marcus held up a single hand, stopping him instantly. Marcus explained that when he gave his daughter his navy blue coat years ago, he taught her that real strength was about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Chloe hadn't gone silent because she was afraid. She went silent to give the school's leadership enough room to show exactly who they were when they thought nobody was watching. At that exact moment, the heavy wooden doors opened once more, and Chloe stepped into the room. She looked at her father, and for the first time in 3 long weeks, a soft, bright smile appeared on her face. Marcus stood up and wrapped his daughter in a tight, protective embrace. Turning back to the silent, terrified men in the room, Marcus informed them that federal investigators and local law enforcement were already parked outside the gates, waiting for his signal to enter and execute search warrants. The quiet, dignified strength of a father and his daughter had completely unraveled a web of power and deceit that had stood untouched for years. In the days that followed, St. Jude Academy underwent a massive, ground-level transformation. Dr. Sterling and Chairman Vance were removed from their positions and faced severe legal consequences for financial fraud and institutional abuse. Thomas, the beloved groundskeeper, was restored to his full position with a formal public apology and his pension completely refunded. The culture of fear and silence that had gripped the school dissolved, replaced by a renewed sense of accountability and genuine respect among the students. On Marcus's final day of leave before returning to his duties, he and Chloe walked together along the high stone cliffs overlooking the ocean near the campus grounds. The heavy fog had finally cleared, leaving behind a wide, brilliant blue sky. Marcus looked down at his daughter, proud beyond words, not just because she had won, but because she had stayed true to her values when it would have been far easier to stay quiet and stay comfortable. Chloe reached into her satchel and pulled out her leather camera, taking one final photo of the sun breaking over the water. She turned to her father, taking his hand as they walked back toward the SUV, knowing that no matter how dark or intimidating the world might seem, truth and courage will always find a way to light the dark.